Hello and welcome to another episode of the Simon and Friends podcast. I'm Simon Short. Joining me this week is Ben Parker. Ben, welcome in, man. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Hello, everybody. And Simon, as always, we really enjoy it. So I happy to be here and hash through some plans.
Absolutely. Let's continue the NFL Draft War Room series. So it's been about a month since we started this, and I'll admit I jumped the gun. I was really excited to do a War Room free agency version, but now those teams certainly look a lot different. You know, you look at the Chiefs and having Kenneth Walker. You have the Broncos trading for Jalen Waddle. You have everything that happened with the Raiders in the last month. My goodness. Those teams look a little bit different, but I think all the analysis still kind of holds true of the things they needed. But here's where we get to go to the spirit of this series, where we are locking ourselves into the war room. We are going through the big board and we are trying to determine what our ideal draft plan for these teams is going to be. So tonight we're going to cover the AFC North and the NFC South. We'll hit all the picks that these teams have, what their biggest needs are, but also just where their picks kind of align. You know, this Draft War Room series isn't just what are our needs and maybe list some players. It's, hey, what are the strengths of this draft? Where do our picks kind of fall and where can we get good value and just good players? What's the strength of this draft at different points, different days of the draft? It's a fun way to kind of look through the draft from a team perspective, big picture as well, not just zeroing in on like a mock draft, a 1 or 2 round mock draft. Um, anything you want to say as you thought about these specific teams, like as you were getting ready for these teams, anything that stood out to you?
Yeah, well, it's always a lot of fun, right? And listen, every team is so different. Man, we've got some teams that the offense is great, the defense is terrible, and it's really obvious what they need to do. Other teams, it's not so obvious. It's like, well, they could use a linebacker, they could use an edger, and maybe they could use an interior guard. So every team is so different. But no, every team was fun. We really, really enjoyed doing the work on this. We take it seriously, but it's seriously fun as well.
All right, just a couple programming notes. This is the Simon and Friends podcast. If you're on YouTube, thank you for being here. Like, subscribe, comment. If you are here on audio, A1 Day One, we appreciate you as always. Thank you. I hope you guys enjoy these. Us doing them every year. And then if whatever part of this is over on the Box Score Network YouTube channel, thank you for being here. If this is your first time on the Box Score Network channel and you are an NFL draft fan, poke around the page because we have a ton of draft content coming in all different forms. We have these episodes, this series. Ben and I have several conversations that are up on this channel as well, just draft ideas, draft strategy, prospect strategy things. Ben has a series of videos, prospect breakdowns for defensive players. You can find his offensive player breakdowns from him and his team on the Pro Football Enterprises channel. And then we also have mocks and big boards from all of us here at Box Score. So if you are here for the first time checking out draft content, thank you. And stick around because we got a ton already up and a ton more coming. Without any more further ado, let's get right into it. So, the NFL Draft War Room series, I am presenting draft plans for all 8 of these teams. Ben is in the war room with me. He's going to provide his feedback. Let me know what he thinks. And we'll see where we differ, where we align, and maybe what kind of consensus we can come to as we develop some of these plans. So, starting with the AFC North, starting with the team with the highest pick, the Cleveland Browns. We have picks 6, 24, 39, 70, 107, 141, 146, 149, 206, and 248. So we brought in Todd Monken to be our head coach for 3 reasons. Number one, he's the only one not named Jim Schwartz who wanted the job. Number two, we do actually think he can do the job. And number three, we want to get this offense back to a respectable place specifically. So it's time to improve the talent on offense, which we haven't successfully done in a really long time. We have 2 first round picks this year, and the needs are obvious. Everything. We need a quarterback. We can address that with our second pick or even pick 39, maybe if we wanted, or somewhere in between with a move up or move down. But I'm honestly less interested in that right now as I am in discussing our O line and wide receiver stack options and what we can maybe pull at 6 and 24. So in free agency, we signed Zion Johnson, Elton Jenkins, and Titus Howard, and that's for sure our left guard and center. Howard is going to be our either right tackle or right guard, depending on what we do in the draft. And a wide receiver, we did nothing. I'd say we have 3 number 3s on the roster in Jerry Jeudy, Cedric Tillman, and Isaiah Bond. Luckily, those 3 guys like have different play styles, so we could really go any way. We just want to upgrade the talent in the wide receiver room specifically. So we could stack this by going wide receiver first with maybe getting Carnell Tate at six to be a legit top two option on a good offense, and then address O line at 24. 24 would most likely not just a right tackle, a Blake Miller out of Clemson or a Maxi Inachor out of Arizona State. I think guys like Freeling and Lomu, left tackles, I think they're off the board by 24. And also maybe Caden Proctor, although I'm viewing him as a left guard only type player right now, anyways. And that's what Zion Johnson is. So Proctor wouldn't even really be on our board for us, truly. I either want an actual left tackle or I want a guy who is going to play on the right side. The other stack we could do would be take Monroe Freeling or Spencer Fano or Francis Maui Noah at six. So go with offensive tackle early. And then a wide receiver at 24. The wide receivers in that range would be Denzel Boston, Kevin Concepcion, Omar Cooper Jr., and Chris Brazzell. I like the O line wide receiver stack the best. I like the ceiling of those three offensive linemen and honestly the floor of them better than a Blake Miller or Ian Achor. I also like the flexibility of those guys maybe being able to play a couple different positions, whereas Miller and Ian Achor I think are pretty firmly like right tackle and maybe in Ian Achor's case right guard only players. So I like the flexibility there, and then the flexibility of the wide receivers too. Like those guys have their different skill sets, and I feel like I'm not getting boxed in to one specific kind of guy by waiting for wide receiver at 24. Whereas, especially at six on the wide receivers, like I'm really only looking at Tate. And so if Tate's not there, I'd have to scramble and go another direction. Anyways, I wouldn't want to scramble and go Tyson. I wouldn't want to scramble and go Makai Lemon. And of course, we could play this as, whoever falls to us in draft. If Tate's there, we go Tate and then we take O line at 24. If Tate's not there, we go O line. It doesn't have to be black, white, wide receiver, O line, or vice versa. Now, the quarterback conversation. I'm just not that interested, honestly, at this point. Ty Simpson is QB2 in this draft, despite what Dan Orlovsky might say. And he's the only one worth taking in the like end of round one into round two discussion. So if he's there after the first round, but teams are talking about taking between 33 and 39, I'll make some calls. That's our third pick, pick 39. So, we get to the end of round one. I've gotten a receiver, I've gotten an offensive lineman. Yeah, we'll make those calls Thursday night, see what it would look like to maybe move up somewhere in the first or in the second round a little bit higher. Um, could 39 plus 107 get him? Maybe. If not, I'm willing to sit at 39, just wait and see. And if he's there, cool. Maybe we'll do that. We'll see what else is on the board, but I'm kind of just looking to let 2026 play out. If it's not Simpson at 39, I'm looking at defensive back and guard. So I'm looking at, and that's at 39 and 70 on day two for us. A potential starting right guard at 39. There's Emmanuel Pregnon out of Oregon or Chase Basantis out of Texas A&M. Both have played right side in their as a first year starter in college, but have been primarily left guards since then. So I'll have to kind of feel out that in the draft process, see if they can move over. If not, I'm looking at defensive pieces, right? So the DB room could stand to get younger. The edge room needs another piece. So I'm going to look in those directions if I don't get one of those guards. And then if we go defense at 39, at 70, I'm looking back on the offensive line. Keelan Rutledge at guard, but then even Jake Slaughter, Connor Liu, Sam Hecht, or Logan Jones as potentially starting center replacements because Elton Jenkins, we've kind of locked into being our starting center. You look at the contract he got, you look at where he played last year, you look at the other guys we signed. Um, but based on his center play last year, his decreasing level of play the last couple of years, and his age, he's not a long term option. So at 70, I'm going to look specifically at a center as well as Rutledge because I do like Rutledge at guard. After I find my interior offensive lineman starting at 107, I'm looking for another pass catcher or two. This could be a receiver or even a tight end. Harold Fandon is great, but I want to be able to move him around the formation. And it's a great draft to get your classic like wide tight end, be in line, block a little bit, catch a little bit. So I think I can get that as early as day three. After that, it's continuing just to add depth on the defense. So all in all, my ideal plan is I'm getting Freeling at six specifically would be the guy I would, if I had my druthers, put him on the left side, let Titus Howard play right tackle. And then I'm getting Omar Cooper Jr. at 24 to be my like true, I'll put him in the slot probably, but good route runner, good separator, good hands over the middle kind of guy. Then at 39, 70, and 107, I'm looking at edge, DB, interior offensive line, and then two more pass catchers in the 140s, and then defensive depth after that. Ben, what do you think of this draft plan for the Cleveland Browns?
Yeah, I like 90% of it. The two things that really stood out to me, let's start with the offensive line because it's all different, right? All that offensive line work that you did years ago that paid off and helped you compete, it's all gone now. I mean, every bit
Hmm.
of it. If you could have pulled a guy or two back in, but it would have only delayed a year or two what had to happen. So listen, the fact that they've made three offensive line signings, I think it was, that's important. They had to do that. Somebody's got to play offensive line this year for the Browns. None of that negates the heavy need to restock offensive line. And that's why you kept mentioning it, not just in the first round, but also coming back at the third or fourth pick to continue restocking that. It's got to be done. It's just as big a need now as it was 6 weeks ago before free agency, as far as we've got to get more talented and we've got to get younger. Those two things have to happen. So, and it will. It'll take more than one off season. So I love the fact that you're looking offensive line at either of the first two picks, and then even later an interior offensive lineman at whichever pick we end up wanting to use there. So I think that it has to happen, and you've got that built in. So that's what I love. The stack. You did what I think is the right way to do stacks. Okay, there's a wrong way and a right way, in my opinion. You took clusters of players that you expected to be at both groups and compared them. And that's the right way to do stacks. You think, well, hey, at 24 or whatever it is, there should be this group of receivers sitting there, and there should be this group of offensive linemen sitting there, and vice versa at six. There should be a cluster of this offensive lineman and a cluster of this receivers. That's the right way to do it. The wrong way to do it, I've heard it done over and over and over again, is people say, well, would you rather have this player at 6 and 24? Or would you rather have that player at 24 and 6? There are no guarantees that that one player is going to be
Hmm.
sitting there at your second pick, right? I mean, absolutely none. You have no control over that. But what you can logically figure percentage wise is yes, out of these three or four players, there should be one guy that we like sitting there. And I'm with you. Those offensive linemen that are probably sitting there at 6 look a lot better than whatever I may get, say, at offensive line at 24. And I still like the receivers I can get at 24, whatever our second pick is, right? So, yeah, I'm with you. I would grab whichever the offensive lineman I want at 6. And then when it comes to my second first rounder, that's where I grab my wide receiver. And there's a nice cluster sitting right there at our second pick. So I think that's the beautiful, correct way to do stacks. And I'm all in on the offensive line, and I'm all in on us getting another pass catcher, which I think it's obvious we need as well.
I keep hearing even now, post like a few weeks post combine, when people are doing this stack thing and they're talking about the Browns and they're saying, you just get Monroe Freeling or Caleb Lomu at 24. Sorry, what? What world are
I
we
don't think
living in where
so.
those guys are going to be there at 24?
Yeah,
I just know the Lions at 17, the Steelers at 21, like the Eagles at 23, like
right,
there are so and you could it's probably the most popular comment on mock drafts like this guy won't be there then, so I don't want to do that. I don't want to, like yuck
right,
anybody's yum on who they want at 24. But when you're doing something like this for me and you're just saying, "Oh, I'll just get this one specific guy." No, you gotta like, what's worst case scenario, right?
right,
If you're saying Lomu, Freeling, and Caden Proctor are the three guys you're looking at 24, okay, what's worst case? You get Caden Proctor. It feels a lot different than getting Monroe Freeling. So like,
right,
you gotta be okay with that sort of thing.
right.
Um, I don't know if he's gonna get brought up much elsewhere. And I meant to do this on my O line episode with Shane a couple weeks ago. Um, I have my comp for Blake Miller,
Okay,
which is
trot it
just
out.
like the most in it. Like the fact that I need a comp for Blake Miller is just kind of a wild place to be in, and that's just who we are. Um, but it's Caleb McGarry, right tackle for the Falcons.
Really? Wow.
The power that they play with, the foot, it's not foot speed, right? They're not particularly fast guys. They're light on their feet though, right?
Yeah,
They can
yeah.
they can change direction a little bit. They can move a little bit. They can generate power. They've got strong hands. McGarry took a while, but he learned to hold up in pass pro. because I don't know if it was just learning to trust. We talked about this earlier with Freeland actually, learning to trust Lindstrom next to him, the interior next to him, where okay, I'm not gonna overset because I've got backup on the inside. But that was his thing, like good run blocker because he generates a lot of power. Um, but like wasn't always strong in pass pro, and still now he can still get beat around the edge with pure speed. But that's my comp for Blake Miller. Like he's light on his feet, but he generates power. He can usually be in the right place, play within himself. Um, and then, McGarry went 27 in his draft, like end of first round. So it would not surprise me if Miller was just kind of like someone drafted him end of first round or second round, and just like you don't think about him for like 8 years. Like he gets a second contract and you're like, oh, Blake Miller. Oh, he did start for 4 years and oh, he wasn't that bad. And then he just gets another contract and then all of a sudden he's in his 30s and you're like, oh wow, Blake Miller. He's been with the I don't know, pick it with the Cleveland Browns for 9 seasons. Look at that. I didn't even think about him one time since he got drafted. I could see that for Blake Miller. So Blake Miller, Caleb McGarry is my comp. Any
Yeah, it's an
any
interesting
extended
comp.
Blake
Yeah.
Miller thoughts? Not a lot of.
It,
I mean, just the fact that he's here is hilarious. But here we
yeah,
are.
you know I'm not a Miller fan. Having
I
said
know.
that, that's all about where you get
Yeah,
drafted. You catch him at the right point, I'm thrilled to death to have him, right? I mean,
yeah.
so at a certain point, he's high enough on the board, you're like, yes. To my experience, and this goes back to him playing high. He plays very extremely
Mm,
high. It was one thing I always picked on with Orlando Brown. Same thing to
hmm.
me. It was like, man, I have a hard time seeing him ever adjust that playing style to where he can really handle his business when it comes to just even average edge rushers. It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, he's got a lot of things going for him, and yeah, he may be starting tackle for a long time. I really wouldn't doubt that. There's a lot good there. But man, when I want to throw the football downfield, I don't want to have to help out my tackle, and I really doubt that I have a lot of doubts that him playing that tall and struggling with edge rushers is going to gradually get a lot better. So that's where I'm at on Miller. But yeah, a lot there still to like.
Um, who would your ideal choice at 6B at offensive tackle for the Browns?
Yeah,
If they had their pick of any of them, Freeling, Fano, or Maui Noah.
I'm happy with all three. I really am. They're all three kind of different. The more you've talked about Freeland, and I watched the tape and I beat him up over the tape, right?
Hmm.
But still, you talk about long range and can do a lot of everything, I'd be just as happy with Freeland. I really would. So, you know, I probably still have Fano. I know I do. I have Fano rated higher and Malinois rated higher. But when you look at long term and ceiling and start mixing that in, why not Freeland? I have no problem with it.
And then last question, just because I know you're having this internal debate and it's killing you, so I might as well put you on the spot on the podcast. That group at 20, when you get to the end of the first round, your second tier of receivers, who would you come out of there with if you had your druthers? I mean, I mentioned Boston, Concepcion, Cooper, and Brazel. Is there another name you would include in that, or who's your favorite in that group right now?
Yeah, honestly, for the Browns, it would be Boston or Brazel. And from that, I have some hard-headed, stubborn, obstinate opinions, and some of them will never change. I'll carry them to my grave, right? But for if I were comparing Boston and Brazil, I really would want to talk to everybody in the room and get a feel for, do I want a guy in Boston who I think is more limited but more polished and I think I know exactly what I'm getting? Or do I want this Brazil kid who's got a very unique talent that not many guys have? I know he's got it. Can we max out that and truly get a really great receiver here? I'm very tempted to go and grab that high ceiling with Brazel, even though I know there's a risk and a floor bottoming out there too. So,
And I think that would probably make a little more sense for the Browns because what I did when I mentioned the stylistic differences of those three guys, right? Like Tillman, Judy, and Bond. I don't know where exactly the Browns were having Judy line up last year, and their wide receiver room got so decimated by injuries. Anyways, it probably wouldn't matter. But
okay.
if Tillman is like, let's say Tillman is their big, like old school X, where it's like he's running the downfield routes as their big guy, some speed, but just some bigness and toughness to him. And then Judy's like their slot route runner type, and then Bond, who's no guarantee Bond's gonna be their starter anyways, but like he's
Right.
there right now, and he's your Z as like you throw him some screens, some deep shots, some drag route stuff. The guy I would want to upgrade most is Judy because I want to upgrade that slot route runner, get the guy open, make things happen quickly. But in your mind, if you're getting Brazel or you're getting Boston, you're upgrading that big X receiver. You're upgrading Tillman,
Right.
ideally, right? So, and like, I think that makes sense because I don't know if Tillman is a true X. I don't know if that's where he would best align. And I think contractually, he's probably also in his last year of his deal, whereas Judy they extended and Bond
Okay.
is, whatever his situation. So that would also make sense from a like, okay, get this guy and like play him behind Tillman for part of the year, and then you let Tillman go in free agency, and now you have your big body X. So I think that makes sense positionally too. But it was good to get our ideas there. All right, Cincinnati Bengals. You tell I wanted to live with Cleveland for a bit because these other ones, it gets a little straightforward, especially right here. So the Cincinnati Bengals, we pick at 10, 41, 72, 110, 189, 199, 221, and 226. It's no secret. We need to fix the defense. We've been bottom 10 in defensive DVOA 3 seasons in a row. The unfortunate thing is, picking at 10 is a dicey place to be to get an impact defensive player in this draft. Now, there's plenty of scenarios where a Caleb Downs, a David Bailey, or a Ruben Bain will fall to us, but we see 5 impact defenders in this draft and 7 teams that could go defense in front of us. That's why, depending on what the Cardinals and Titans do at 3 and 4, I'm starting to look at moving up as early as 5 with the Giants. We have picks 72 and 110 in the middle of the draft, but then not another pick until 189. If starting with the Jets, the draft goes Arvell Reese and then maybe David Bailey and Sonny Styles 2 through 4, I'm offering both those picks to take downs at 5. So I'm calling the Giants and I'm saying 10, 72, and 110 for 5. Do you do it? But then I probably also look to get like 145 back or something to bridge that gap a little bit. It's too much to trade a third and a fourth for a safety or an edge with historically short arms, right? That's just not good business, right? Historical outliers, bad positional value, and trading up to do that in the top 5. But if I can get a little something back, I'll feel a little bit better. Anyways, if it's Cleveland at 6 or Washington at 7 that I needed to trade with, I'm offering 72 and not 110. If it's New Orleans or Kansas City at 8 or 9, I'm just offering 110. But if things are playing out well for us and more offensive players are going earlier, I'm happy to sit at 10 as long as it looks like I'm getting one of those 5. If I get any of those 5 guys, I'm happy. Um, I don't even know what my true stack about them would be. I'm at this point. Um, I would just be thrilled to get any of those guys that I view as defensive playmakers and difference makers for this team. At 41, I'm taking another defender. A swing on a Caleb Banks here would be interesting. He might fall because of the medical, because it did come out he broke his foot at the combine. So that's really
Oh,
dicey. But if we can clear him medically, that's a big, big hit. But there are plenty of names at all levels of the defense that I got eye here at 41. 72 or 110, depending on if I make any trades, I'll look at an interior offensive lineman, specifically at center. We just traded or just drafted the mid round guards last year. Um, Fairchild and Winters, whatever that other guy's name was. I'm the Bengals. I don't actually care who my offensive linemen are. And then the later day 3 picks are going to be more defensive swings. But at 72 or 110, wherever, and I mentioned the names earlier, Hecht, Jones, Lou, Slaughter, like pull a name out of a hat there. One of the centers. We have Ted Karras still on the roster, but we want to have a plan in place for when he's done. So looking for one of those picks in the middle there to be a center, but it's going to be defense otherwise. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 picks. If I have all 8, it's going to be 7 defensive players and one center sitting in the middle of that. What do you think about this plan for the Bengals?
yeah, I agree. And this one's fairly straightforward. I don't see how you can come up with too much different. I'll discuss one difference here in a second. The focus on defense, I totally agree with, and that's what we said last off season. They started that process. They're working on it now. Probably next off season, really finishing that up, I figure. But I think that's the thing. And I'm happy taking best defensive player available at any spot we're picking. I'm also totally happy with your plan of trading up, and getting an impact player. Why not? We've already started the defensive
Hmm.
process. We know we're not going to finish it this offseason. So we got all these picks sitting here. Why not trade up since we're kind of within reach? and get a guy we that everybody really does covet. Why not? I have no problem with that. If we stick at 10, a Mansour Delane would totally make me satisfied for the Cincinnati Bengals. I wouldn't even hate trading back and collecting some guys that are sitting deeper in the first round, and maybe even adding, say, another early second round pick or something. I'd be thrilled with that. Sitting there at 41, I wouldn't mind trading up from 41 and grabbing some of those defensive players that are sitting right there at the edge of the first round. So as long as it's defense early, I'm thrilled. Okay, so trade up, trade back, sit, stick, pick. I'm okay with it. And then yeah, I'm hearing more and more people complaining about Bengals offensive line, you know, and you and I banged on them, especially me, 3 off seasons ago. I mean, just drilled them up one side and down the other, and they ignored it, and Joe Burrow acted like it didn't matter, and the offense has flourished, and now all of a sudden we're hearing, oh, they need to fix the offensive line. Well, yeah, that's always been the case. I kind of gave up on it. But yeah, if at some point, the organization feels like we're finally ready to do an offensive line thing, I'd be all in favor of that too. But this year, early picks, defense for me, and then let's start solidifying something, whether it's center or guard or whatever. Yes.
You know, when I do the war rooms, I'm trying to think about a little bit of what they're doing, right? Like what their actual plan is. Not necessarily trying to predict, but try and be in their heads a little bit, all right? Like what are they going for? And yeah, they just like for them, this is the biggest offensive line investment they've had since
Yeah.
who's the one that finished his career with the Rams? Whitworth,
Yeah.
right? Since
Yep.
he was like his hey, like when he was there. Because they have a big money left tackle who, like, we could quibble about how good we think but like he's a big money left tackle, just got an extension. You have a first round pick at right tackle, um, and you have two mid round picks at guards, right? So like that you've
Yeah.
drafted, and Karras is like a respected veteran who's been around for a long time. So like this is the most investment on the offensive line they've ever had. So it's kind
It
of like
is.
for them, they're like, look at us. Look, we have the 20th best offensive line in the league, man. We're rolling in it. And they've just got everything on offense, and you've got those guys for a reason. So yeah, this has to be defense. Yeah, 10 is a dicey spot. If you can't get one of those five guys, and those five guys to me are Arvell Reese, Sonny Styles, David Bailey, Caleb Downs, and there's an edge. I'm at Ruben Bay, right? If they can't get one of those five, I don't want to take like and you could take a Delane. Delane's a good player. And like Dax Hill is so up and down. DJ Turner's up and down. But those are like objectively their two best defenders, right? And like Delane could be your slot when you go into nickel, and he would probably be an upgrade over either one of the. But I want to feel like I want to feel the pick, right? I just want to I want to feel it in my bones, like when a play is happening. This is my slight against corners and stuff. But I need to see and feel that guy making an impact. And it's funny with someone like Sonny Styles because they played two rookie linebackers last year, and Sonny Styles is the man, and he's better than those guys are. But like, are they going to want another rookie linebacker in the middle trying to call the defense, right? Or are they going to say we sank with those two guys last year, so we're just gonna bank on the experience and it might be a sunken cost fallacy a little bit where they're like, no, we went through the trials and tribulations of those guys being rookies that now we're gonna let them play as second year guys. But you put a Caleb Downs behind them, you get a little help
Yeah.
from an edge rushing perspective and Bain or Reese or Bailey. Um, and I don't think Styles or Reese is gonna get there. So it's gonna be about can Bailey or Downs or Ruben Bain, yeah, get to you there. Um, and that would feel so different from an edge rushing perspective, where now we're taking these two hyper productive players that have questions in like their makeup,
Yeah.
right? Um, Bailey, is he a run defender? Bain, are his arms long enough? But last year, where it was like this guy who looks perfect, but like didn't have the production that those two guys had. So that
Yeah.
would be like a cool kind of yin and yang for them, I think, to be able to nab one of those guys. Um, all right. That's it for the Cincinnati Bengals. Done. The Baltimore Ravens are up next. So here we are with the Ravens. Picks 14, 45, 80, 115, 154, 162, 173, 174, 211, 250, and 253. We're back on the clock with the 14th pick, everybody. Don't, ignore everything that happened in the last 30 days. And that's pretty good because we have needs we need to fill. The interior of our offensive line had two issues last year at the guard spots. And while we brought back John Simpson from the Jets, who was with us before, and he's going to improve one of those spots, we lost Tyler Linderbaum and all of that. So we still have two holes on the interior of the offensive line. I'm hoping one of those right tackle falls, right? I'm hoping Spencer Fano or Francis Mauigoa falls. Because if so, I'd be willing to trade up a bit to get one and put them straight at guard. Now, this is Simon. This isn't, these guys need to play guard. But as the Ravens, as a really smart franchise, I could easily see them being like, oh, these guys are going to fall down the boards a little bit because people don't want to take a tackle with short arms. Sure, we'll take him. And if he plays guard instead of tackle, great. He's going to be an all pro guard for us. And that would suck for Simon. But, anyways, that's not the point. Back into this. That trade would likely be 14 and 115 to get to maybe 11 or 12, and then 14 plus 154 to get to 13. Like I'd even move one spot up because we know the Rams could be active, right? The Rams could be looking to trade this pick if they're like, hey, we want to get a player or we want to get something for 2027, like, like they did last year. So if those guys aren't falling, because they could theoretically go as high as the top five for both of them, I'm looking at wide receivers and corners at 14. We need an upgrade at receiver, regardless of what you think of Zay Flowers, and we need a real corner too to keep Marlon Humphrey in the slot as he continues to age, because that's his best position. So Jordan Tyson, Makai Lemon, Mansour Delane, and Avion Terrell are all on the board for us. Lemon is almost a write off because I don't want to build the wide receiver room around two smaller guys. But if for some reason Tyson, Delane, and Terrell are all gone, I'd be happy with Lemon. The order I would go in is probably Tyson 1, Delane 2, Terrell 3, then Lemon. Then at 45, I'd look at whichever position I didn't take at 14. Then at 80, I'd look at interior offensive line. Noticing a theme for the AFC North right now. So I'm coming out of the first 2 days of the draft with a receiver, an offensive lineman, and a corner. Because hey, the Ravens need a center. The Ravens don't have a center right now. There's still a few guys out there in free agency. There's a Lloyd Cushenberry out there. There's a few guys you could get to be a center for 1 year, sort of thing. But the Ravens still don't have a center post the Linderbaum trade or signing. So if they also wanted to get in on that, where, like I said, for the Browns and Bengals, from pick 70 to 85, try and nab one of those centers, I could definitely see that for them, and that's what I would recommend. Um, Day three, I'm starting to look at tight end and on the defensive line, and picks 162, 173, or tight end, defensive line will be 162, 173, and then later than that will be just depth everywhere. But ideally, I'd like to come out of here. Let's say it's Jordan Tyson at 14. Pick your run of corners at 45. I don't know if a Chris Johnson can maybe still be there or something, but then 80 would be one of those centers. That's kind of what I'm looking for there for the Ravens.
Yeah, I see. I like it. The Ravens are a little hard to design for and plan for, and yet in some ways, because they're a good franchise, they have a lot of good players. It's not hard, right? It's almost like, hey, whatever we get, we'll make it work. So, yeah,
Exactly.
I really do trust them here. That people talk about their drafting and all of that, and it's been good. But also the development has been good. These guys
Hmm.
have for a very long time had a system to put guys into. So it wasn't just the drafting, it's also the system that they've placed them in, and the development there has been huge. Wide receiver, that really is my number one desire here for the Ravens. I would love to pull in a wide receiver. It's an interesting point you make about not wanting to build around Lemon and Flowers because it's two smaller guys. I it's not ideal. Okay, it's definitely not, but I wouldn't hate it. You could do a lot worse than Micaiah Lemon coming in and pairing with Zay Flowers. Now, it's a good point because those smaller guys, if defenses want to lock them down physically by putting one guy over them, just physically beating them up basically, and then sitting a safety somewhere over the top to help with deeps, you can shut them down. That's a real thing. But with the Ravens being so physically gifted at running the football, and with Lamar Jackson being so gifted at playmaking, I still wouldn't hate having Lemon paired with Flowers. So it's something I would take a hard look at, and I wouldn't recommend that for everybody, but for the Ravens, I would. I think that would still work pretty good. Lemon's got such a great vertical jump, it makes him play taller than he really is. Having said
Hmm.
that, you can see on the Oregon tape and on the Notre Dame tape where they were able to kind of physically take him out of the game. You know, he just wasn't as effective. So I do get that argument. Jordan Tyson, I do think would be ideal. Um, he's not the biggest guy either, but he is taller, and
Right.
I think he can expand his game farther than what Lemon can. So, having Jordan Tyson there, having him kind of playground it with Lamar Jackson would be a ton of fun,
Hmm.
productive fun. Ravens have struggled so long to draft and develop wide receivers, right? They really have. But still, you got guys that you think might be sitting there. You got a need for it. I don't see why you wouldn't take a guy right there. So I'd be very interested in wide receiver. And then, yes, depending on who's sitting there, interior offensive line, cornerback, yes, I'm all in on that.
Couple things here. You in our mock draft, quick plug for our box score mock draft. It was technically our 2.0, but it was the first big one we did with a lot of hosts from box score. You took
Right.
Kenyon Sadiq here at
Yeah.
14. And
Yeah.
that's an interesting pick because not a true receiver. And it's not that he's not a true tight end because he does block, but I've been saying this since, October with him. He's just a strange body type. He's a strange play style. He's like an H back type that can play out of the backfield, play the slot, play in line because he does block. But yeah, he's like a rocked up 6'3", 245-pound player, and you just don't see a lot of those, right? It's usually like the 6'4", 240 move tight end who's just a big slot receiver, or it's the 6'5", 250 inline tight end. He's almost built like a Chigakonkwo, who's like doesn't really have a spot, but he's much better because he can play downfield and he can run routes and he can make good catches and he can block. So for this guy that doesn't really have a spot, it feels like a thing where he would end up on the Ravens and it's like, oh, good player because nobody else knows really what to do with him. I don't know how they would necessarily deploy him or line him up. Obviously, new coaching staff, but that's a player where like I can see just like they just need an infusion of talent at the pass catcher position. Say all three of those top receivers are gone and those two tackles are gone, and they don't want to take a let's say they disagree with me and they don't need a corner. Um, 14 for Sadiq would be interesting just from a like, what is this pass catcher room made up of Zay Flowers and Kenyon Sadiq gonna look like? But it would be pretty cool.
It would. You made an interesting point more than once. Sadiq is not for everybody. He's just not, despite his ridiculous athleticism. There's not one or two, there's multiple instances on tape of him leaping over tacklers. And I mean, they're not low, they're high. He's still jumping clear over them. It's astounding to watch a guy that size do that. And for a guy his size, Oregon ran a ton of tunnel screens for him, alley
Hmm.
screens, whatever you want to call them. I mean, a bunch of them. He's got the speed, the athleticism to do it. It's astounding. But you're right, it's not for everybody. I would not draft him until I'd had a long talk with my offensive coordinator about are you actually going to use that? Because if you're not, don't waste our pick, So let's go
Yeah.
get somebody that you'll actually use. So he's not for everybody. If the OC was like, yeah, we'll work with that, then I'd be all on board. So it is about just adding a pass catcher, especially if Lemon and Tyson weren't there. But I'd rather have Tyson and Lemon for the Ravens.
Yeah, if you're a team that's like, I need a tight end, I'd wait till day two and get a guy that's in a more typical build, a more typical archetype of a tight end. But if you're like, man, we need a boost to our offense, who do we like for that? Then Sadiq is on that short list, right? And positional alignment and positional value be damned. We just need a spark on offense. He fits that mold.
Yeah,
Um, with these three picks, 14, 45, and 80,
yeah,
to me, I see four big needs. And well, and I guess you're kind of doing two birds here. Cornerback, pass catcher, and then you need an offensive lineman. So what else do you think the Ravens should be doing on the offensive line? Like, let's say they go the route where they don't get somebody at 14. Let's say those guys are gone. Let's say they draft a center at 80.
Yeah.
You're then looking at an interior offensive line of John Simpson at left guard. You're looking at Emory Jones, second year player out of LSU at right
Yeah.
guard.
Yeah.
And you're looking at a Sam Hecht or a Logan Jones at 80. Like, are you rolling with that, or do you feel like they need to do more, whether it's more swings in the draft or go get a vet in free agency?
I'd rather have more. As a matter of fact, maybe you didn't mention him because you're tired of hearing me harp on him, but I was a little surprised you didn't mention Ilwane, the guard from Penn State,
Hmm.
for the Ravens, because I do have a major concern about him, but I still love the potential and the athleticism and the run, all of that. I think for the Ravens, he would be perfect. So
Yeah.
since we lost Linderbaum, if you could tell me we could add Ilwane at 14, get our center at 80, because I do think it's a legit cluster
Hmm.
stack sitting at 80. We
Hmm.
can get a
Yep.
guy at center that we like. I feel way better about our offensive line. And then at that middle pick, what is that? What's our second pick?
45. Hmm.
45. Then we get to either pick a corner, and there's guys I like at corner there,
Hmm.
or we can address the pass
Pass
catcher because
catcher.
there's also
Hmm.
pass catchers there. So, but we couldn't do both, right? So,
Yeah.
pick your
Because that
poison.
and that was what I was gonna get to next. Like, what are you kind of leaving off? Are you only taking one offensive lineman? Are you leaving off the corner? Are you leaving off the pass catcher? They haven't really cared about the cornerback two spot in years,
Yeah,
right? Even when they got Nate Wiggins and finally admitted like Marlon Humphrey's not a number one anymore, that
right.
was kind of a big deal. But now they're just like, yeah, we'll throw a number two out there, and if he's not good, we'll make Marlon Humphrey play outside. And, that's fine for stretches, but it's hurt them in big moments, which I'm
Yep.
like, at some point, they need to invest in this. Um, Iwane is interesting because he was definitely my like favorite pick to mock the Ravens at first. And then the trade with the Raiders happened, and then since they've come back to it, I don't know if I'm just convinced he's not going to be there, and I'm mentally just
Hmm.
taking it off my brain, or if I'm really hung up these days, I think especially this season, this cycle, on guys not switching positions if they don't have to. And they
Right.
bring John Simpson back. And he hasn't really played right guard since like his rookie year with the Raiders. So to me, it's like you went out and you paid Simpson money to fix this problem. So because left guard hasn't been good for them since he went to New York. So it's like he's your left guard, right? You're not going to pay him as a veteran and make him switch positions. And
Right.
then Ioane is a left guard at Penn State. Now he's athletic in that phone booth. So I wouldn't surprise me if he could just walk in and play right guard. But you know how I feel about like you take an offensive lineman in the first round, and then you're like now change positions. Like
Right.
what does that mean? So it I guess it just doesn't feel that clean to me. So I wouldn't err on the side. That's why I was even like if one of those right tackles falls, I'd rather get them, have them at least play the same side, but go into guard and play. And I've told you my theory on Fana, right? The whole like web chart, the flow chart of
Right.
offensive linemen. Like arms are too short to play tackle, so he's got to move inside. Are his feet good? No, he's going to play guard. Are his feet good? Yes, he's going to play center. So like people think Fano could be a center, and he's athletic enough. So like, heck, is he? Do you draft Fano or move up for Fano if you can get him? Because he's falling because of his arms, although his arm shot back up, 6/8 of an inch or whatever. So he's going to be a tackle again. And they're like, well, we'll see him if he can play guard or center, and we'll draft a guard center capable guy at 80 or 115, and then we'll call it a day. I don't know. It's interesting. Any other thoughts for you on the Ravens?
Yeah, if he was sitting there at 45, Chris Brazzell was a guy I would love to add to the Ravens because Lamar's got the arm to get it out there. They don't necessarily have to have a production level guy. It could be the high risk, high ceiling guy. Brazel would certainly be a fun guy to add there as well because Flowers is more of the production guy, and Lamar himself is production. I mean, he is production. You add the running game, that's production. You add Flowers, that's production. So if you wanted to, run the risk with Brazel, it's also an interesting thing there at 45.
I love Brazel. Yeah, it'd be real tough for me if it was like
Yeah.
Ioane at 14 and then Brazel at 45. That's just oh God, that would
Yeah.
suck for me. I'd hate that. I'd hate
Yeah.
that. Stupid Ravens.
So
Stupid Ravens. Okay. Now I'm all frazzled for Brazel, and you got me all messed up thinking about the Ravens doing well. All right, my Pittsburgh Steelers. It's my stupid team. Um, all right, Pittsburgh Steelers. We have picks 21, 53, 76, 85, 99, 121, 135, 161, 216, 224, 230, and 237. One more than the Ravens. Really playing that comp pick game. Um, at pick 21, I'm primarily looking at two places: the left side of the offensive line and wide receiver. Monroe Freeling, Caleb Lomu, Vega Ioane are squarely in my sights, and I'd be willing to trade up for them. Jordan Tyson and Micaiah Lemon are also in that category for me. We have three third round picks, and I'd happily trade the first of those. So that'd be pick 76 to move up. That would get me into like 14 to 15 range. It's funny because that's a very similar trade to what they did for Broderick Jones in 2023. Um, and now here we are again, a few years later, maybe needing to do that again. My board right now goes Freeling, Ioane, Lemon, Tyson, Lomu. Lomu is a little lower on my board than those receivers, but then when I think about the need and the investment in those two position groups for us between, wow, we really don't know who the left tackle is going to be in 2025, and we just traded for and paid Michael Pittman a year after trading for and paying DK Metcalf, I think I'd even put Lomu ahead of those receivers just because of the need. And I really like Lomu, so I'd be happy with that. If I sit at 21 and all five of those guys are gone, my sights turn to Omar Cooper Jr., Casey Concepcion, Peter Woods, and Chris Brazzell. Those receivers would be really good complements to Metcalf and Pittman with their skill sets and infusion of speed. Concepcion Cooper specifically are like slot types. Concepcion is explosive after the catch. Cooper Jr. is a really strong route runner. Um, and then Peter Woods, man, it's just a nod because of the upside. And if I can get him at back to up to 310 pound range instead of the 298 he's at right now, he might be the heir to Cam Hayward in a year. Um, because his ability to penetrate and then just not get pushed off his spot when he was playing a little bit heavier and really get after it and diagnose run plays was really strong. His 2025 tape as he, got, cut down a little bit, just not as good. But if I talk to him and can kind of get him up back up to that range, I'm pretty confident in what I saw. At 53, assuming I get my offensive lineman done in the first round, I'm looking at receiver. Um, Again, Brazel, I love if he's here. You and I were joking the other day. You didn't know to put Brazel at what was it? What'd you say? 30 or 50 or 30
30
or
or 50.
60?
Yep.
And my quip back was there are numbers in between, but like he really could go anywhere. I feel like
Right.
if he was wide receiver four, if he went ahead of this tier two group, it would not
And he
surprise me.
could, yes.
And if he was wide receiver eight and was after guys like Chris Bell and Concepcion and whoever else you want to put there, it would not surprise me either.
Right.
So I wrote Brazel, and then I'm like, maybe I'll take him at 21 instead of 53. But any of those, day two wide receiver guys, I mentioned it, Chris Bell and Jeremy Bernard, and there was one other one, Elijah Surratt, yes, not so much of Malachi Fields, but yeah, any of those day two wide receivers, I'll certainly look at. Um, but if I went wide receiver first, I would look at Pregnon and Basantis as left guards, right? Those guys are college left guards. And if I only have the two third round picks now, um, I'm looking with those picks. So at 85 and 99, I'm looking at a safety and a run stuffing defensive tackle. So ideally, like I could get a left guard at 20 or a left tackle at 21, a receiver or a left guard at 53, and then a safety and a defensive tackle at 85 and 99, let's say. On day three, we'll resupply the cover with young defensive players, maybe some specialists. Could use a punter, could use a good return man. And on defense, I'm specifically interested in Tacario Davis with that length and the history of defensive backs from Washington. Um, Steelers like those avatar corners, those 6'3" plus long arms. You put me on to Davis like really early last year, and I've been obsessed with that idea ever since. So I'd be checking him out day three as well. What do you think about this plan for the Pittsburgh Steelers?
Yeah, I like it. I like 98% of it. So trade up for Freeling, Lomo, or Iwane. Yes. Why not? Absolutely. And totally love that. Jordan Tyson, Micaiah Lemon. Trade up. Yeah, why not? Probably not gonna cost you too much. You've got tons of picks and why not? I love it. For me, Omar Cooper, no. We can dive into that if you want to or
Hmm.
not. Concepcion, yes. I do have a little bit of concerns about Concepcion, but not enough
Hmm.
to not draft him here. Okay, so Concepcion, yes. Peter Woods here, if we're gonna stick and pick, Peter Woods might actually be my favorite here out of everything that you mentioned. The upside, the potential upside is there, but I feel like even if you don't get the upside, you're still got a heck of a player that fits in, with this mindset that the Steelers have. So, I like the Peter Woods thing. That was really cool. Um, sliding back down to 53. If you catch a wide receiver there are so many good wide receivers in this year's draft, but not great ones. There's still going to be a small cluster of them sitting there at 53. Even guys like Ted Hurst from Georgia State or Bryce Lance from, I forget
North
where he's
Dakota State.
from. Yeah, North Dakota State. Man, those are solid guys right there. I mean,
Hmm.
solid guys. They've got size, they've got athleticism and or speed, they've got production. Those are some solid players sitting back there at 53. So, catching a wide receiver, there's every reason to expect you can get a wide receiver you like to upgrade the room at 53. Every reason to expect it. So, yeah, um, grabbing grabbing whatever you want at 21 or trading up to get whatever you really want, and then at 53 picking a wide receiver. It all works. Yeah, I think I liked your Steelers plan better than any of them, and I've liked most of them, but the Steelers plan here absolutely works.
And we should mention like the reason the Steelers are in need of this left side offensive lineman is between Broderick Jones kind of having a slow track of development. Now I put that on the
Yeah,
Steelers for sticking him, drafting him, moving up for him, and then sticking him on the right side for 2 years, not his position. It's
it's a good
annoying.
point.
He plays on the left side for one season and does look better. He's playing the best ball of his career. Like he's more engaged. He just looks more comfortable. Not all the skills were there. He was never a very technically sound player.
Right, right.
Um, and he got regarded as athletic. I don't even think was athletic as a Monroe Freeling, but then he sustains a neck injury at the end of the year and he ends up needing like neck fusion surgery, I think. So like his like future and outlook is like even questionable at this point. And you've got undrafted free agent Dylan Cook who stepped in and played well, but he's kind of been up and down since joining the Steelers a couple of years ago. Like really good training
Yeah,
camps, good preseasons, gets into a game, doesn't look great, like doesn't loses the spot as the swing tackle, like the things that happen when you are relying on a small school UDFA. So like I don't want to walk into camp with him as LT1 if I don't have to. Spencer Anderson, currently left guard one, who seventh round pick several years ago, was a really good six offensive lineman for the team, played spot work at left guard this year. Isaac Seumalo leaves in free agency. I don't necessarily want to walk in with him not having real competition to start, so
yeah,
if I walk into training camp with a first round pick, Spencer Anderson and Dylan Cook, and two of those three come out of camp as starters, I'm happy with that. If I walk in with Anderson, Cook, injured Broderick Jones, and then let's say, a third round pick, I don't feel quite as good about that. So that's why, we're looking on the left side there. We should also have the Ty Simpson conversation here. I kind of wanted to do it with the Browns, but
yeah,
it applies to the
yeah.
Steelers as well. Um, if the Steelers pick Ty Simpson at 21, I wouldn't walk out of the draft upset as a Steeler fan, right? I'm a
Yeah.
Steeler fan. Like I wouldn't be that mad. I wouldn't be that excited either necessarily. You get really into the okay, it's we got to start hitting these check boxes of things then, right? Like, okay, what's the protection plan? Who is going to be, the left tackle? Okay, are you getting a slot receiver? Okay, what exactly is McCarthy's offense going to look like this year? Does Aaron Rodgers also come back? Is Simpson sitting on the bench for a little bit? Is he competing with Will Harris? I'm immediately going into like fact finding and trying to answer questions. Whereas, yeah, if it's a Lomu or if it's free, like I'm running around the streets, right? And that's just me. Yeah, but um, I think Ty Simpson is a perfectly fine end of day one, early day two pick. I think it's totally fine if someone wants to trade back into the first round for, the Jackson Dart range of where he went last year. If
Yeah.
any team does that, I think that's totally fine. I watch the tape. I watch a lot of Ty Simpson games this year, and I think he can make most of the throws. Some types of throws are better than others. I think I can totally see where his struggles came from at towards the end of the year. I completely disagree with all this. He's actually QB1 stuff that's happening. Um, but I that doesn't mean that I think he's going to be terrible. I don't think this is like a bust waiting to happen. I think he's the perfect like barometer of if he goes and gets into a good situation, he'll be fine, right? And so if that's the Browns, now the Browns shouldn't take him at 6. I wouldn't even necessarily take him at 24 based on what they need, but if they did, that wouldn't be terrible. But if they got him at 39, or I think the Jets have pick 33 or whatever, if someone takes him in that late 20s to early 30s range, that's fine. But like we said with a lot of these guys, like you better have a plan, like whether that's sit right away or just have great weapons around them, great, offensive line around them. I think he's totally fine. How do you feel about Ty Simpson? How would you feel if he went to the Steelers at 21 or the Browns here at, 24 or 39, somewhere in that range?
Steelers and Browns, I wouldn't excite me, but I don't hate it either.
Yeah.
I'm not high on Simpson. I'm probably lower than most people. I just am. But having said that, if I had an OC that I really trusted, one of the higher end XO guys, like man, they're sharp, they're on it. And they're like, yeah, give me that guy. I'll work with that guy. We'll make it work. And if we
Hmm.
also had a fairly decent supporting cast, you mentioned that the weapons in place,
Hmm.
why not? There's enough there to work with that if I've really got an OC that I trust and love, and he says, yeah, I can work with that, then heck yeah, let's go work with that. I got no problem with that at all. Er- er, Things being new there in Pittsburgh and Cleveland was what really gives. And plus, the supporting cast isn't quite there yet. It's not to
Yep.
say that it can't be, but
Hmm.
it's just not there.
Hmm.
That's the only pause there. So, yeah, I'm totally fine with it. My worries with Simpson are not bad arm, it's limited arm, but also it's are we getting a guy who's just worked really hard at his game and has been to a lot of Manning camps, right? Because a lot of it does look clean, crisp, like he's worked on it. But even having said that, you're exactly right. Good OC, good weapons. He should be fine. I, why not? So yeah, that's where I'm at on that.
And for the Steelers, like it would be I would want someone else to take the beating for a year, probably. Because if you're taking him at 21, you don't have a left tackle, right? You're not finding a left tackle in this draft at 53 or later. You're just not.
Right. Right.
Um, so whether it's a Will Howard throwing him to the dogs or Aaron Rodgers comes back for a year and then you get your left tackle next year, or hey, Dylan Cook ends up being awesome. Like that would be great. I do love Dylan Cook. It's a fantastic story, but it's just not good process to walk in with a, fourth year undrafted player who's never been a full-time star. But you have the
Yeah.
wide receivers that he could throw to, right? You got two tight ends, you got two receivers, you got a run
Right.
game, you got a couple backs, you have a strong right side of the line. And then Cleveland, you don't have great receivers, but they have a little more draft capital. They've invested a lot in the offensive line. So if they took a tackle at 6, let's even say Simpson at 24, and then they got a receiver at 39, and then at 70, they even get a card. Let's say they got Rutledge out of Georgia Tech. And let's
Right.
say they got Brazel at 39 and Simpson at 24 and Freeling at 6. Then you're like, all right, we might, we got a little something here. Again, I wouldn't start him week 1. You let Shadur take a beating. You let, if you want Watson to play, whatever. If you want Gabriel to get beat for a couple games, fine. But like, they're both teams like have a case for it. So yeah, I wouldn't be super excited and I wouldn't be super mad. I'd be the most mad I would be is just because I'm not that excited. Like as a fan, I want to walk out of Thursday night and be like, "Holy crap, my team just got this dude I'm pumped for."
Right.
The way I felt about when they took Troy Fautanu, like I was buzzing when the Steelers took Troy Fautanu. And then when they took Broderick Jones even, I was kind of just like, "Yeah, okay, fine. That's whatever." That's how I feel about Ty Simpson.
Yeah,
All
because
right.
I'm with you. If I was gonna play out scenarios, since we've got McCarthy, and since allegedly that was the magical bridge to get Aaron Rodgers back, because if that's the goal, I would
Yeah.
rather walk out with players I was excited about. best player available at some of these positions. Let Rodgers and McCarthy do their thing for another season or two, whatever that golden plan was, and then collect a quarterback from one of the next couple of drafts who you never know, but they project to be better than this year's group currently looks. But we said the same thing last summer.
I would need a left tackle to look forward to, and that way I can say I have a left. Like I could just watch Fautanu and Freeling or Lomu all season, and don't watch
Right.
any of the other stuff. It's like when the Steelers took Pickett. I was kind of just like, okay, I know what's gonna happen here. I know why they did it. It's fine, but wake me up when it's 2025, and it's
Yeah.
something new. If 2025 was Aaron Rodgers, so it wasn't that great.